Today we are starting our player season reviews of this past season for the Detroit Pistons. First up, Jaden Ivey. We'll talk about his season, the ups, the downs, the positives, the negatives. We'll talk about all of it in today's episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast.
You are Locked On Pistons, your daily Detroit Pistons podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's the deal? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast. Per usual, I'm your host, Kuka Hill. You can find me over on Twitter at Kuka Hill. I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We're free and available on all your podcast platforms, or hit that subscribe button to the YouTube channel. You can leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Today, we're going to be starting our season reviews. First up, we'll have Jaden Ivey, then we'll get into Simone Fontecchio, and then we'll get into Marcus Sasser and review all three of their seasons this year. I'm currently undecided if we're going to do season reviews of guys who played most of the season with the Pistons, but then got traded and or released, like a Killian Hayes. Probably not going to do that. A guy like Marvin Bagley. Right now, I'm leaning towards no. Like Isaiah Livers, like those guys, I'm leaning towards no. But if you guys would like to hear their season reviews, let me know in the comment section down below. Other guys like Muscala, like those type of players, let me know if you guys want to hear about them. Right now, I'm leaning towards no. But again, if you guys feel differently, let me know. But let's go ahead and get into Jaden Ivey's season review with the Detroit Pistons. It was an up and down season for Jaden Ivey, very much of a roller coaster season for Jaden Ivey. And I think just after the season, seeing the fact that he is put in all kinds of trade talks, and there's a lot of talk amongst the Pistons community about moving him for a different piece. And there's a lot of articles from the beat writers about him not being so very high on the, untouchables list, or the ranking of the guys who will return list. I think just looking at that will let you know that it wasn't that great of a season for Jaden Ivey, but it wasn't all bad. We'll talk about both the positives and negatives with Jaden Ivey. So one of the positives, he played 77 games this year. He was healthy for the most part of the season. At the end of the year, where a lot of guys were not playing, Jaden Ivey was. At the end of the year, when guys were, shut down for the year, Jaden Ivey was playing out there. He was out there giving it his all. So that's a positive. He had another mostly healthy season for him. This year, he shot, just to give you his overall box score numbers, he had 15 points a game, 3.8 assists, 3.4 rebounds. He shot 43% from the field, 33% from deep, and 75% from the free throw line. He had a true shooting percentage of 53.6, which was a very slight increase from last year's 52.8. So the most positive part about Jaden Ivey's season is like I said, one, he made it through the season healthy, and two, I thought at times throughout the year, you saw flashes of what he could be. It wasn't consistent. It wasn't, nowhere near was consistent enough. But I thought in flashes, you saw what he could be, especially during those few week stretch right before March, where he was hitting around like 48% of his threes. During that stretch, you really saw what Jaden Ivey could become down the line. I'm not even the games at the end of the year where he had a few games where he hit a few threes, but couldn't hit anything beside the restricted area. That's not a good game. That's not what you want to see. There was a few weeks there in February and late January and February where he was getting to the basket and he was hitting threes. There was that game between him and Cade when they both scored 30 plus. It was the best they had looked together ever. And it was their best game of the season. Best the Pistons probably looked to Pistons fans all year long. You saw flashes of that popping for Jaden Ivey, but it just wasn't anywhere near consistent enough. And one of the things that at the beginning of the year we thought was going to be a major positive for him was at the beginning of the year, it looked like he had improved around the rim. But as the season went on, he started to get worse and worse and worse around the season, or around the rim. At the beginning of the year, I believe he was like in the 70th percentile around the basket. He was finishing really well. He ended the season 23rd, 34th percentile on layups. So just as the season went on, it started to become more and more of a struggle for Jaden Ivey. but there was flashes there for him. As far as the negatives, I think the immediate negative and the biggest takeaway I think from this season when it comes to Jaden Ivey is the current answer of, can Jaden Ivey and Cade Cunningham work together? Do they make each other better? Do they make the team better? I think the answer is no, as of right now. And it's not, and we've had this talk multiple times on the podcast. Is it because Jaden Ivey's, theoretical archetype doesn't fit with Cade? No. It's because Jaden Ivey himself is not that good right now. Jaden Ivey did not shoot well from beyond the arc. Shot 33% from deep this year. He took a step back there. He shot 34% last year. Shot 42% from the field this year. Shot 74% from the free throw line. Last year, he was really good on catch and shoot open threes. He's in like the 81st percentile. This year, he's in the 36th percentile. Overall catch and shoot, he's in the 40th percentile. And he continues to be a negative defender. I know some people think he gave a lot more effort this year. He did give some more effort, but he still is a negative defender. And also, the turnovers, I thought, were a bigger concern this year with Jaden Ivey than last year, because last year he had the ball in his hands a lot more. His usage was, he was asked to create a lot for the Pistons at the end of last year specifically, and he looked better last year. He looked better at the end of the year last year for the Pistons, running the offense and creating stuff for his teammates. A lot of people talk about him and Cade Cunningham's turnover percentage, but if you go and look at Jaden Ivey's turnover percentage, he has a higher turnover percentage than Cade Cunningham did. So it was a rough season for Jaden Ivey, and he was dealt a tough hand at the beginning of the year because of the whole Killian Hayes situation and Monty starting him over him, and then throughout the year having had a meeting with Monty to play Jaden Ivey more. So was he dealt the best hand? No. But did he do anything with that hand he was dealt? No, he just didn't. I think Jaden Ivey is going to be the most watched player this offseason for Pistons fans to find out, one, is he going to be on the team next year? And if he isn't, who's he moved for? But I thought this was, and I've seen from even the biggest Jaden Ivey fans that they are really disappointed with him this past season. And I don't know how you can't leave. You can't leave this season not feeling disappointed with Jaden Ivey. I think Jaden Ivey probably was the most disappointing player for the Pistons this past year. This was a guy that a lot of people had a lot of hopes for. A lot of people thought he was going to take this next step. A lot of people thought was going to prove that him and Cade could really play together. Now we get a full season of seeing Cade and Jaden Ivey together. How will they look? They're going to take again, Pistons fans out there were going to win 30, 35 games. And it wasn't all on Jaden Ivey. Absolutely not. A lot of it had to do with the roster construction. Like we've talked about this all year. The roster construction was terrible. The coaching, it was not very good at all year. So all of that contributes to it. But Jaden Ivey's play also majorly contributes to it. He didn't take the step didn't nearly take the step people thought he was going to take from beyond the arc. Was a worse shooter this year. Did not improve that much around the rim. He still is an erratic passer. The in-between game that I thought he improved on majorly last year, I was incredibly impressed from where he was at the beginning of last year to the end of his rookie year when it was talking about his in-between game and his decision-making in the in-between game. This year, completely stepped backwards, like a way big step backwards in that area. An erratic passer, a poor decision-maker, wasn't going to the mid-range shot. The mid-range shot was looking out of sorts, just like it did last year at the beginning of the year. Like, Jaden Ivey, look, he has immense potential. His athleticism is through the roof. And like I said, there was times this past year where you saw flashes of what he could become. But that's all they were. It was just flashes. And it didn't last nearly long enough. And I think the Pistons decision makers, and I think a lot of people around the Pistons community come away with the question of, can Jaden Ivey and Cade Cunningham fit together and make each other better? After this season, the answer currently has to be no. It has to be no. Jaden Ivey in a few years, Jaden Ivey at his peak form, maybe, but the Pistons are not going to have that time now. They were expecting him to get closer to that this year, and he just didn't. He took a step backwards. So now you got to ask the question, these are the two questions that the Pistons are going to ask themselves when it comes to Jaden Ivey after this past season. It's, how good is he actually right now? Like, is he actually a good player right now? I think they lean towards no right now. And then two, how soon do we think he can get to being a good player? Those are the two questions they're going to ask themselves. And depending, if they do trade him, you get your answer to that. If they don't, I think you get the answer to it. So you'll get the answer this offseason to those two questions that they're asking themselves. And we'll see what happens. I think Jaden Ivey has immense potential. I still think he's a nice prospect. But this was an extremely disappointing season from him. And it's because of this season, his future with the Pistons is up in the air. And honestly, I don't know what's going to happen this offseason with them. So tough season for Jaden Ivey. And I think, again, even his biggest supporters were disappointed by him from what I've seen. It was not a great season for Jaden Ivey this past year. But let me know what you guys thought about Jaden Ivey's season this past year. What's your guys' biggest takeaway? What's your biggest question that you have after leaving this year? I think my biggest question would be what I said the Pistons are asking themselves. Do you actually think he's a good player right now? And how soon will he be a good player? Those are the questions I'm left with after his season now. But let me know what you guys are thinking down below in the comment section or over on Twitter at Kuka. When we come back, we'll review Simone Fontecchio's season with the Detroit Pistons. We'll talk about that when we come back. I've been told I'm a competitive person. I've been told that by my wife. I've been told that by my friends. I think even you guys out there think I'm pretty competitive. And I think it is true. I've been competitive my whole life. And it is what it is. I think all of us have a little bit of a competitive side. And my competitive side is a big fan of Monopoly Go. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's been downloaded over 150 million times. It's a great twist on Monopoly where you play on not one, but hundreds of Monopoly boards in crazy locations, building up amazing cities that bring you big money. But the best part is messing with my friends. I can charge them for rent on my iconic properties, just like classic Monopoly. But now I can also heist their vaults of riches for myself. And the leaderboards show me who the biggest Monopoly tycoon is. But it's not just my competitive side that loves it. You can team up with friends and people all around the world in time tournaments to earn huge rewards. So get in the game and join your friends today at download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or Google Play. Again, download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or Google Play Store today. Now let me tell you about another one of our sponsors, Game Time. Game Time is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. And I absolutely love Game Time because I am a procrastinator. I wait till the last second for literally almost everything. And it screws me over when it comes to buying tickets. But with Game Time, you get last minute deals all the way up again to the very last minute. Save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concert, comedy, theater, etc. Flash deals save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event. Save even more when you choose a section and let Game Time choose the seats for you. And also in the app, you can see what those seats would look like. You don't have to buy the tickets, get to the game, get to the event. Oh, these seats were trash. Or I shouldn't have gotten these seats. No, you can see right in the app what your seats will look like. So you know ahead of time if you're having the best seats possible. Lowest price guarantee or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed with Game Time. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We're free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button at the YouTube channel. Leave us a 5-star review, whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. Now we are here to talk about Simone Fontecchio. And I think everyone is going to feel, I think everyone's going to feel pretty good about how Simone Fontecchio played for the Detroit Pistons. His trade at the midway point of the season, it didn't save the Pistons season. It didn't, launch them into playing contention. But it gave them a glimpse. It gave them just a very minor glimpse of what this team could possibly be. The idea around building around Kate Cunningham, what it looks like. Just the idea of a lineup with Simone Fontecchio made complete sense. And it led to, I think, the best basketball, obviously, of the Detroit Pistons season. I remember a few of you guys have commented on this video over the last few days, which is funny. But I remember recording a video like 2 weeks after Simone Fontecchio's trade, and the title was, "Are the Pistons turning a corner from being the worst team in the NBA to just being a normal bad team?" And obviously, guys went out. They ended up losing. They lost pretty much just as much. So don't know if they actually did turn that corner. A lot of you guys are trolling me in the comments of that video now. But either way, the point is that when Simone Fontecchio arrived with the Detroit Pistons, there were spurts where they actually looked like a normal NBA team with him on the floor. His raw stats with the Detroit Pistons: 15.4 points a game, shot 48% from the field, nearly 43% from deep on 6.3 attempts. He shot 54% on twos, 85% from the free throw line. He had a 61.3% true shooting percentage. I think arguably the best trade that Troy Weaver has ever made. You can argue, maybe if you're a big fan of Jalen Duren still, you can maybe argue the Jalen Duren trade. Maybe the Bojan trade was, when he talks about value with just giving up KO and Saban Lee for Bojan. Those are up there, but I think Simone Fontecchio was the best move that Troy Weaver has made in the trade market. He fit this team like a glove. What he does is exactly what this team needed all year. And it's what they still need moving into next year. They need more guys like Simone Fontecchio. They need more guys who are capable of hitting open threes, hitting movement threes, who have size and give effort defensively. Simone Fontecchio by no means is some all-world defender. By no means is he going to be on an all-defensive team ever. Like, that's not going to happen. But simply having a guy who can hit threes, attack closeouts, and then on the end of the floor, it's not just a complete slouch like Burks and Bojan were. It actually gives effort and tries. It made a world of difference. Like that, just that tiniest of details, just that makes the world of difference. That's what this team needs. They need more 3-and-D guys. It's just that simple. If you look at lineups this past year with Simone Fontecchio, Kay Cunningham, Ausar Thompson, Jaden Ivey, and Jalen Duren, that 5-man unit played 113 minutes. They outscored opponents by 3.90 points per game. They had an offensive rating of 113.5 and a defensive rating of 109.6. They were actually a competent team with that 5-man unit on the floor. With that 5-man unit on the floor, they were outscoring opponents. Now, when they went to the bench, when they had to do their rotation, things fell all over the place. And Monty Williams went away from that starting lineup, and par for course. But when those 5 guys played together, the Pistons looked like an adequate NBA team, and a lot of it has to do with the fact they finally had a 3-and-D guy like Simone Fontecchio. And again, Simone is not some great defender. He just simply tries. And I'd say at least an average defender, maybe a slightly below average one, but like an average defender who tries and has size and is active on the glass. Like, that made a world of difference. That 5-man unit worked. If you take out Ausar Thompson and you put Isaiah Stewart with that 5-man, with those 4 other guys, that 5-man lineup outscored guys by 7.3 points a game. 90 minutes played. They had an offensive rating of 112.17 and a defensive rating of 104.81. The key here, Simone Fontecchio unlocks those guys. Because before, you have Monty Williams trying to play Cade and Jaden Ivey with Ausar, Stu, and Duren. It just is not going to work. You can't play all of those guys together. You just can't. You take out one of them and you put in, like, if you put in Bojan with that, like, you're still not getting defense. You're just giving up defense. If you put in Simone in that lineup, it completely changes everything. So Simone Fontecchio, I thought, had an absolutely fantastic year with the Detroit Pistons. At his exit interview, he talked about how he was happy to be here. He loves Detroit. He's going to be looking forward to coming back. His whole motivation is to pursue a long-term deal with the Detroit Pistons. He openly said that. He said they're going to be working towards a long-term contract. I expect him to get that long-term contract here. He spoke about how he was happy to come to Detroit and get a chance to show he had more to his game than he showed in Utah. And you definitely saw that. He can attack closeouts really well. He actually finishes around the rim pretty damn well. I'm not going to lie. Better than I thought he could before he got here. A really good three-point shooter, movement shooter, gets a lot of threes up, especially the more minutes he plays. He tries on defense. Like, this guy, he is the perfect fit for the Detroit Pistons. If I had to grade his season, I'd go A. And the only thing stopping him from being an A+ is because he only was able to play 16 games at the end of the year because he had that toe injury that kept him out for the last, I think, month or 3 weeks of the season. That's the only reason why I really don't give him an A+. But outside of that, he answered everything. He did everything every Pistons fan wanted from their wing positions. They have had one of the worst wing rooms for years. I've said this over and over and over on the podcast. Their wing room has been terrible. But Simone Fontecchio brought some stabilization to that wing room. And I fully expect him to come back next year. I expect him to come back with a long-term contract. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up in the starting lineup next year because he just simply makes sense. Unless they can get someone else, and who knows, they're going to be active this offseason. Maybe they can get someone else who's a little bit better. Maybe they can go get an all-star level player. Maybe they can get someone like that. But outside of that happening, I would not be shocked to see Simone Fontecchio starting next year because of how good he played for the Detroit Pistons. So absolutely fantastic 16 games of the season for Simone in a Detroit Pistons uniform. He is a little bit older. 28 years old. He's one of those guys who played overseas and took a while before he came over to the NBA. But he said at the exit interviews that his goal this year was to prove that he is a quality NBA role player. That's what he said. He wanted to prove he is an NBA role player. And he more than did that. He proved that he might be an NBA starter in the NBA. That's what he proved. So I think even by his own goals, he would give this a major successful season, an A type of season. And I'm looking forward to seeing him come back with the Pistons next year. I thought he played absolutely fantastic and did exactly what the Pistons needed. They need more guys like Simone Fontecchio, and we'll see if they're able to get more guys like him. But let me know in the comment section down below or over on Twitter at Cougar Hill. How do you guys feel about Simone Fontecchio's season this past year? Again, comment section down below or over on Twitter at Cougar Hill. When we come back, we'll talk about Marcus Sasser's season with the Detroit Pistons, his first year in the NBA. We'll break it down when we come back. PrizePicks is America's #1 sports app with more than 3 million members. It is the easiest, most exciting way to get in on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. You just pick more than or less than on 2 or more player stats and watch their winnings roll in. Get in on the playoff action, win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks as you and the world's best players take the game to a new level during basketball's postseason. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000 with basketball, hockey, college basketball entries all year long with PrizePicks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. And my favorite thing about PrizePicks is it offers an injury insurance policy. This means if you have a basketball player or a football player while football season going on that gets hurt in the first half and does not return in the second, that player is automatically rebooted. If you guys are involved in daily fantasy sports, you know that is an absolute game changer and can save you all the time. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, download PrizePicks today and use code LOCKEDONNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy with PrizePicks. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. Free and available on your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. Marcus Sasser. Marcus Sasser, I think, has become. I think Marcus Sasser has been put in a difficult situation in regards to the Pistons community. And what I mean by that is if you look at his numbers, this was overall a successful season for Marcus Sasser. He shot 43% from the field, 37.5% from deep. He didn't play that much, but when he did play, he came in, was a spark plug. He came in and scored the basketball. He was a little bit up and down he started off really, really hot to start the year. Had a little bit of a rookie wall, but slowly built himself back up. I think the biggest takeaway from Marcus Sasser is for him as a player is at the very least, he's going to be one of those guys who comes in as instant offense, comes in, looks to instantly score the basketball. And that's what his role is going to be, I think. I think his role is going to be a scorer off the bench. He is a really good dribble pull-up shooter. He creates an insane amount of space. He has a great handle, yanks guys around. Like he has a really special talent when it comes to creating space for himself and hitting step back, dribble, pull up threes, creating that separation. He has a special talent when it comes to that. Now, what I mean by him being put in a tough situation is because a lot of the criticism I felt like towards Marcus Sasser, and a lot of the criticism you may hear about, it's not even really about Marcus Sasser. It's not because of him. A lot of the talk around him has been, why did the Pistons take another undersized guard when they need wings? And that makes complete sense. So a lot of the stuff that you'll hear about Marcus Sasser is going to be tracked all the way back to their decision to even draft him. Because even when we recorded last year with Locked On Cougars, and we talked about, what's his role going to be this upcoming year? Even I was sitting there, I was like, I don't know what his role is going to be. They have a bunch of guards already. He's an undersized guard. They don't really, he wasn't really a need. I don't really know what his role is going to be. Now, obviously, he ended up finding a role for himself at parts of the season and played well. Like, for overall his rookie season, how Marcus Sasser should look at his season, absolutely, I think he should look at it as a success. I think he proved he can play on the NBA level. He can score the basketball. He's a good shooter. I think he proved that. I think he's going to be an NBA player. So I think successful season for a late first round NBA pick. Proving he can be an NBA player, I think is, that's a successful season for him. So I think that's good. He was put in a tough position because of him being picked to this team and them needing wings. He was also put into a tough position in the community and with the team because Monty Williams was asking him to play a role that he is not suited for. A lot of times he was asked to play backup point guard for the Detroit Pistons, and he's just not a backup point guard. That's not what he is. He is not someone you want running your offense. He's not a great passer. He's not a great playmaker. He's not the quickest with the reads and creating for other players. That's not what he is. What he's really great at is scoring the ball. What he's great at is creating separation for himself. What he's great at is giving him the ball and saying, here you go boogie in somebody and get us a bucket. That's what he's really good at. Having that as your floor general and trying to put him into a floor general role, I guess I should say, was putting him into a tough spot and was putting him in the spotlight to be criticized about not being a playmaker when everyone knows he is already not a playmaker. Like, everyone knew that. But because he was being put in position to be that, it caused everyone to talk more about that. So I thought, honestly, even myself, to be honest, I think maybe I went even a little too hard on Marcus Sasser this year talking about that stuff. Because like I said, I know that's not the type of player he is. And I feel like maybe someone like myself and others in the community needed to try to separate that from his own play. I think you can say Marcus Sasser needs to get better as a playmaker. He needs to get better at making reads, creating for others, like all that stuff. Like, you can say he needs to get better at all that stuff, while also acknowledging that what he does well, what he was expected to do well, he did do well. Like, it was not the player that he was expected to be this year is exactly what he was. A really good shooter, a good scorer, a guy who can boogie on people and create space for himself. Like, that's what he was asked to do. So hopefully, moving forward, next year, they get a backup point guard and allow Marcus Sasser to be that off guard, to be that, like the first thought that goes off my head, like the Jordan Clarkson off the bench. Let him just come in and get shots up. Let him just come into the game, and his role is to simply score the basketball. Come in, shoot the lights out, create shots for yourself. That's what you're asked to do. And defend at the point of attack. I thought his defense was a little bit underwhelming this year, but he's a rookie. I think he still has the tools to be that point of attack defender. And also, again, it was hard to evaluate someone like Marcus Sasser's defense this year because of the scheme and because of how bad the team was overall. So it's hard to look at that. So I'll give him a pass with that. Overall, I think this was a successful season for Marcus Sasser. He proved he can shoot, proved he can score, proved he can play on the NBA floor. Just stop playing him at backup point guard. You're putting him in a bad position. You're putting him in a position to be criticized by people by playing him in the wrong role. Which it was disappointing, the fact that Killian Hayes was not able to improve at all this year for the Pistons to a point where they felt like keeping him because him and Sasser made sense together. Allow Killian to be the floor general and Marcus Sasser to be the scorer. And then when Monte Morris came back, they traded him because he wasn't really playing that well, if we want to be honest. So it wasn't like you could even play those two guys together. They were both undersized too, so that would have been a problem. The archetype you want next to Marcus Sasser as a backup point guard is a bigger guy that can guard opposite guards or bigger guards and allow Marcus Sasser to guard the point of attack, backup point guards, the smaller guards, and allow him to just be a scorer offensively. I think that they're going to do that. I saw some Pistons fans saying they want them to go after Nickeil Alexander-Walker. I think that would be a good pickup. Maybe even a guy like a Dennis Schroeder to be the backup point guard, allow him be the guy to run the offense a little bit. Schroeder is a little bit more of a scorer guy too, but he has experience and knows how to run an offense. Like, it's not like he can't. He can play make for guys and get in and kick out. And just, I think the main goal for Marcus Sasser is to just continue to improve on what he's already good at. Like, if Marcus Sasser can go from being a 37.5 3-point shooter to a 40% 3-point shooter, like that should be the goal for him. I'm not expecting him to become a lights out playmaker. I'm not expecting him to be a great point guard. That's not what I want from him. I want him to become great at the things he is, that he's good at right now. Instead of going, let's go from good to great. And I think that's where a lot of Piston players, the young players, have messed up over the last few years. Instead of trying to improve upon what you're good at and turning what you're good at to being great at, the Piston players had some things they were like average at and above average at, and immediately went to try to become other things. Wanted to become, okay, let's add this to my game. Let's add this before they even tried to grow on what they're already good at. That's why I want to see for Marcus Sasser. I think he can. I think that dude, with the kind of separation he creates and the kind of touch he has, especially in the mid-range or on floaters, that dude has incredible touch. If he can go from a 37.5 3-point shooter to a 40% 3-point shooter, he can go from a 47% shooter on twos to like a 50% shooter on twos. Like, that's where he should go. Become the best possible bench scorer you can be, and try to fight for being a sixth man of the year guy in the future. Like, I think that's in his future. That's how good of a scorer I think he could be. So overall, I thought it was a good season for Marcus Sasser. Put him in a better position next year, whoever the coach of the Pistons are. And please, front office, president of basketball operations, put him or get guys that allow him to be in that position, because he can be a good player. He can be a good one. You just got to play him in the right position, in the right role, and allow him to flourish. I think he can do that. So, and we got to stop holding the fact. We can be frustrated that the Pistons didn't get a wing and the fact that they needed a wing like G.G. Jackson. Don't hold that against Marcus Sasser. He didn't do that. He didn't draft himself here. He can only control how he played. And how he played, I thought was worthy of being picked where he was. I thought he played pretty well his rookie year. So, pretty good season for Marcus Sasser. Let me know in the comment section down below how you guys feel about Marcus Sasser's season, or over on Twitter at KukaHill. That's all we got for you guys today. Thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen every single day. Free to available on all your podcast platforms. Hit that subscribe button on the YouTube channel. Leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. And until next time, I'll see you guys later. Stay safe out there. And until next time, peace out.